Imagine standing on a quiet street in Fortaleza, Brazil. It's a humid afternoon in March 2005. You're watching a beat-up white van pull up to a nondescript house on Rua 25 de Março. It's a small, two-bedroom place with a faded facade, exactly like every other house on the block. Two guys hop out of the van, wearing boots caked in thick red mud and work clothes that look like they've seen better days. They start unloading heavy equipment, industrial-grade drills, coils of thick PVC piping, and stack after stack of wooden planks. A neighbor, probably just curious or maybe a bit suspicious of the noise, wanders over to see what's going on. One of the workers wipes the sweat from his forehead, flashes a friendly, tired smile, and explains they're starting a new business, Grama Sintética. They're an artificial grass installation company. The neighbor nods, satisfied. The house had been sitting empty for months, an eyesore on an otherwise decent street. It's good to see some life in the place, even if it's just a bunch of guys selling plastic turf. But here is what that neighbor didn't see. Those heavy bags of soil they were moving, they weren't being unloaded from the van. They were being loaded into it. These men weren't bringing supplies in to beautify the neighborhood. They were hauling the guts of the earth out from under their feet. This wasn't a landscaping startup. It was the most ambitious engineering project in the history of crime. Meet Luis Fernando Ribeiro. He's 42 years old, and on paper, he's a nobody. But in the underworld, he's a legend. Luis is a former bank security consultant, the guy banks used to hire to tell them where their blind spots were. He knows exactly how the system works because he's the one who helped build the walls. But now he's decided that instead of protecting the vault, he's going to gut it. And he just rented this specific house for one terrifyingly precise reason. It sits exactly 256 feet from the Central Bank of Brazil in a perfect straight line.
For the next 96 days, Luis and a crew of 25 men will disappear into that house. They are going to dig a tunnel through solid clay, jagged rock, and a labyrinth of underground infrastructure. They'll navigate around massive water mains and high-voltage electrical cables that could fry them in an instant. Their target? A vault containing 164 million reals, roughly 70 million US dollars, in cold, hard cash. People think robbing a bank is about masks, guns, and a fast car. But the truth is, the biggest heist in history didn't involve a single shot being fired. It didn't happen in 3 minutes. It happened over 3 months, inch by agonizing inch. Luis knew that if you want to steal $70 million from the most secure building in the country, you don't go through the front door. You go under it. But here's the paradox. How did 25 men live in a small house, remove 30 tons of dirt, and run industrial machinery 24/7 without a single person in a crowded city noticing? That is the $70 million question. And as the clock starts ticking, Luis is about to find out that while the earth is easy to move, people are much more complicated. In a crew of 25, someone always makes a mistake. And in this game, one mistake doesn't just mean you don't get paid. It means a nationwide manhunt that will rewrite the rules of Brazilian justice. Let's go back to the beginning. September 2004. 6 months before the first shovel hit the dirt. Luis Fernando is sitting in a dim bar in Sao Paulo. He's not alone. Around the table are 4 men who look like ordinary middle-aged guys, but they are the Avengers of the Brazilian underworld. You've got an engineer who specialized in subway construction, a man who understands soil stability better than he understands his own kids. You've got a former bank employee who knows the guard schedules and the exact thickness of the vault floor. You've got a master locksmith who can bypass systems that haven't even been invented yet. And finally, you've got the money man, a specialist in moving millions of dollars across borders without blinking an eye.
Luis spreads a map out on the sticky wooden table. He points to the central bank's Fortaleza branch. He shows them the vault, then shifts his finger 2 blocks away to a residential street. The engineer looks at the map, pulls out a pen, and starts scratching out calculations. He's looking at the geology of Fortaleza, sandy topsoil giving way to dense, wet clay. It's a nightmare to dig in, but it's perfect for noise dampening. He tells Luis it's possible, but it's a suicide mission. They'll need to move at least 1 ton of dirt every single day. They'll need to stay 3 meters deep just to avoid the vibration sensors on the street level. Luis doesn't blink. He tells them they won't trigger the alarms because they aren't going to touch the doors. They aren't going to touch the walls. The vault is a 6-sided box of reinforced steel, but the bottom of that box is sitting on concrete and rebar. It's the one place the bank thinks is impenetrable because of the sheer weight of the building. Who's going to dig through the foundation of a skyscraper? The crew is sold. The payout is too big to ignore. $70 million split 25 ways is roughly $2.8 million per person. In Brazil, that's not just rich, that's never work again, buy an island, change your identity money. But Luis issues a warning. This isn't a movie. There are no rehearsals. If one person talks, if one neighbor gets too curious, if one girlfriend gets jealous, the whole thing collapses. By February 2005, the landscaping company is officially open for business. They paint a professional-looking sign, Grama Sintética. They stock the garage with rakes, shovels, and rolls of bright green artificial grass. It's the perfect cover. Why are there bags of dirt in the van? Because they're a landscaping company. Why is there mud on their boots? Because they're a landscaping company. It's hiding in plain sight. Inside the house, the back bedroom is transformed. They pull up the floor tiles and start the vertical shaft. The first 10 feet are the hardest. The soil is packed tight, and the air is thick with the smell of damp earth and sweat. They reinforce the walls with heavy timber beams, creating a square shaft that drops straight down into the dark. Once they hit the target depth, the real work begins. Imagine being in that tunnel. It's barely 3 feet wide. You're 13 feet underground. The only light comes from a string of dim bulbs stapled to the wooden supports. The heat is suffocating, 100 degrees Fahrenheit with 90% humidity. You're on your hands and knees, hacking away at the clay with a shortened pickaxe. Behind you, another man is scooping the loose dirt into buckets. There's no room to turn around. If the tunnel collapses, you don't just die. You're buried in a coffin made of 3 tons of Brazilian earth.
They work in 4-hour shifts, 24 hours a day. The noise of the city above masks the muffled thuds of their tools. To keep the men from suffocating, the engineer rigs up a makeshift ventilation system using PVC pipes and an electric fan. It's not much, but it's the difference between breathing and passing out. Every night, like clockwork, the white van leaves the garage. It's loaded to the shocks with buckets of dirt. They drive to construction sites across the city, dumping the evidence in plain sight. Who's going to notice an extra pile of dirt at a building project? By the end of March, they've hit the 100-foot mark. They are halfway there, but the pressure is starting to crack the crew. Imagine 25 criminals living in a small house, never leaving, constantly covered in mud, working like slaves for a payout they can't even see yet. Arguments break out over who's digging too slow. One guy almost walks out. Luis has to play psychologist, warden, and boss all at once. He reminds them of the number, 164 million. He tells them that every bucket of dirt is a brick in their new mansion. In April, things get dangerous. At 180 feet, the pickaxe hits something that isn't rock. It's a wet, metallic sound. A water pipe. Not a main, but enough to start a leak. Within minutes, the floor of the tunnel is a swamp. If the pipe bursts, the tunnel becomes a tomb in seconds. The engineer has to make a split-second call. They can't patch it without calling the city, so they have to dig around it. They change the angle of the tunnel, adding another 10 feet to the journey. It's a gamble. If their calculations are off by even a few inches now, they'll miss the vault entirely and end up in the bank's parking garage. Then, at 220 feet, they hit the Widowmakers, underground high-voltage lines. These cables feed the entire downtown grid. If they nick one with a shovel, they'll be vaporized instantly. More importantly, the power surge would alert the utility company immediately. The engineer spends 6 hours on his belly, carefully moving the cables inches at a time, securing them against the wooden beams with rubber insulation. It's like performing surgery in a grave.
By late April, they are 6 feet from the bank's foundation. They can hear the muffled sounds of the bank's air conditioning units humming above them. This is the moment of truth. They aren't digging through dirt anymore. They are staring at 1.1 meters, nearly 4 feet of high-strength steel-reinforced concrete. This is what $70 million looks like from the bottom up. Luis brings in the heavy hitters, specialized diamond-tipped drills.
These things are designed to cut through bridge pilings. They're loud, they're heavy, and they generate massive amounts of heat. They can only drill on the weekends when the bank is closed and the city noise is at its peak. They wait for Saturday night, August 6th. The city of Fortaleza is alive with music and traffic. At 11 p.m., the drilling starts. The sound inside the tunnel is deafening, a high-pitched scream of metal against stone. Dust fills the air, turning their sweat into a thick paste. They drill for 30 minutes, then stop. They listen. Silence. No sirens, no shouting. They keep going. By 2 a.m., they've ground through 18 inches. By 4 a.m., the drill bit suddenly loses resistance. It punches through into empty space. They're in. The engineer uses a manual chisel to widen the hole, terrified that a power tool might trigger a vibration sensor now that they've breached the shell. By 6 a.m., the hole is wide enough for a man to squeeze through. One of the diggers, the smallest guy in the crew, crawls up. He finds himself in the bank's basement, a storage area for old records and cleaning supplies. He looks up. Directly above him is a metal floor grate. He shines his light through the slats. He's looking at the inside of the vault.
Stacks of wooden crates, all marked with the central bank seal. Each crate is filled with bundles of 50 and 100 real notes. It's a mountain of paper. The air in the vault smells like old ink and ozone. He signals back down. The news travels through the tunnel like an electric current. They did it. But they don't move yet. They have to wait. It's Sunday morning. Security guards will be doing their rounds. They retreat back to the house, sealing the hole with a piece of plywood painted to look like concrete. They spend the day in the house, eating cold pizza and checking their watches every 30 seconds. This is the longest day of their lives. Sunday night, 8 p.m. The bank is locked down for the night. The guards are in their station, watching monitors that show empty hallways and locked doors. They aren't looking at the floor of the vault, because in the history of this bank, the floor has never moved. The crew enters the tunnel in shifts. They form a human chain that stretches 256 feet. One man in the vault, one in the basement, 6 in the tunnel, and the rest in the house. The man in the vault starts grabbing the cash. He doesn't even look at it. He just stuffs it into heavy-duty duffel bags. Each bag weighs about 25 pounds. He passes it through the grate, down to the basement, into the tunnel. It's a conveyor belt of wealth. By midnight, they've moved $10 million. By 2 a.m., $30 million. The physical toll is insane. Moving 3.5 tons of paper through a 3-foot-wide tube is like running a marathon in a crawl space. But the adrenaline is a hell of a drug. Around 3 a.m., disaster almost strikes. One of the men in the middle of the tunnel, a guy who's been solid for 3 months, suddenly snaps. The claustrophobia hits him like a freight train. He starts screaming that the roof is coming down. He panics, trying to scramble backward, and kicks one of the support beams. The wood groans. Dirt starts raining down from the ceiling.
Everyone freezes. The man in the vault stops. The men in the house hold their breath. If that beam gives way, the tunnel zips shut like a zipper, and half the crew is erased. The engineer's voice crackles through the makeshift intercom. Don't move. Nobody move. He crawls into the tunnel, whispers to the panicked man to shut his eyes, and manually resets the beam while the man's weight is literally holding up the earth. It takes 20 minutes of agonizing tension, but the tunnel holds. The panicked man is dragged out, and the chain starts moving again. By 6 a.m. Monday morning, the vault is a ghost town. They've taken everything, 164.8 million reais. They've even taken the foreign currency and the coins. Luis looks at the stacks of bags in the house. It's a beautiful sight. But he knows the clock is now his worst enemy. In 3 hours, the bank opens. He tells the crew to vanish. Don't buy anything. Don't call anyone. Go home, take a shower, and wait. They disperse in small groups, taking different routes. The white van makes its last trip, not with dirt, but with a few final bags of cash hidden under rolls of artificial grass. By the time the sun is fully up, the house on Rua 25 de Março is silent. 9 a.m. The bank manager, a guy who probably had a nice weekend at the beach, walks into the vault for a routine inventory check.
He opens the heavy steel door, steps inside, and his brain simply refuses to process what he's seeing. The shelves are bare. The crates are gone. He looks around, wondering if he's in the wrong room. Then he sees it. The grate in the floor. Within 30 minutes, the house is surrounded by federal police. They send a lean officer into the tunnel with a flashlight and a radio. He crawls for what feels like miles, his voice echoing back to the surface. It's reinforced. There's lighting. There's ventilation. My God, they've got a landscaping sign.
The discovery sends shockwaves through Brazil. The media calls it the heist of the century. The police are humiliated. How did a crew of 25 men dig a tunnel the length of a football field in the middle of a city without anyone noticing? The investigation is the largest in Brazilian history. They analyze every grain of dirt, every wood shaving, every fingerprint. But the crew was smart. They used gloves. They wiped down the surfaces. They left nothing but an empty house and a very expensive hole in the ground. For 3 weeks, the trail is stone cold. Luis and his men are ghosts. But then, the law of large groups kicks in. Remember what Luis said? All it takes is one mistake. In a luxury car dealership in Fortaleza, a man walks in. He's wearing cheap clothes, he smells like cigarettes, and he's looking at a top-of-the-line Honda Civic. The salesman, smelling a commission, gives him the pitch. The man nods and says he'll take it. He reaches into a backpack and pulls out a stack of 100 real notes, 45,000 reals in cash. The salesman is a pro. He counts the money, but he notices something. The bills are crisp, they're sequential, and they have that specific metallic smell of bank-fresh ink. He asks the guy where he got the cash. The guy grins and says, "I won the lottery, man. Lucky week." As soon as the guy drives off the lot, the salesman picks up the phone. The federal police don't just arrest the guy, they put a tail on him. They watch him for 48 hours. He leads them to a safe house. Then he leads them to another member of the crew. Then another. It's a domino effect. These guys, who had been disciplined for 3 months under the earth, couldn't handle 3 weeks with millions in their pockets. They bought jewelry, they threw parties, they told their lottery story to anyone who would listen.
By September, the police have 8 of them in custody. They're facing 15 to 20 years. One of them, facing a lifetime in a brutal Brazilian prison, decides he'd rather be a snitch than a martyr. He gives up the name, Luis Fernando Ribeiro. Luis knows the net is closing. He sees the faces of his crew on the nightly news. He takes his share, roughly $8 million, and heads for the border. He makes it into Paraguay, settling in Ciudad del Este, a city known as the smuggler's paradise. He's got enough money to live like a king for 10 lifetimes. But here's the thing about being an anti-hero. The more money you have, the smaller your world gets. He can't go to the club. He can't go to a fancy restaurant. He's stuck in a gilded cage. He gets lonely. He gets bored. And in November 2005, he makes the ultimate amateur mistake. He picks up the phone to call home. The Brazilian federal police had every line associated with his family tapped. They didn't just hear the call. They triangulated the signal. They coordinated with the Paraguayan authorities. On a Tuesday morning, as Luis was walking to a small cafe to get an espresso, he felt the cold steel of a pistol pressed against his neck. He didn't fight. He didn't run. He just sighed. He had had 4 months of freedom. He'd pulled off the greatest heist in history, but he'd been defeated by a Honda Civic and a phone call. Luis was extradited back to Brazil and sentenced to 15 years. But the story doesn't end there. When the police did the final tally, they realized something staggering. They had arrested 13 people. They had recovered roughly $8 million. But 12 members of the crew, nearly half the team, completely vanished. And with them, $50 million.
To this day, 12 men are living somewhere in the world with the spoils of the Fortaleza heist. They didn't buy the cars. They didn't make the phone calls. They stayed in the shadows. They are the ones who truly won. The Central Bank of Brazil heist wasn't just a robbery. It was a testament to the power of a simple idea executed with insane discipline. It proved that the most sophisticated security systems in the world are useless if you're willing to get your hands dirty and crawl through the mud. It showed that the system is only as strong as its foundation, and foundations can be broken. Luis Fernando Ribeiro is out of prison now, or maybe he's still inside, depending on which legal maneuver his lawyers are working on this week. But his legacy is the tunnel, a 256-foot monument to human greed and ingenuity that still sits under the streets of Fortaleza, now filled with concrete. They say you can't arrest an idea, and the idea behind the Fortaleza heist, that the money is always there if you're willing to go deep enough to get it, is something that keeps bank managers awake at night to this very day. Because somewhere out there, right now, someone else is renting a house. They're buying a white van. They're painting a sign for a landscaping company. And they're looking at a map, counting the feet to the nearest vault. If you think this was the last time someone went under the vault, you haven't been paying attention. But if you want to see what happens when the heist goes perfectly, and then the getaway goes horribly wrong, you need to see our next story about the man who stole a Boeing 727 and vanished into thin air. Click here, because the ground isn't the only place where people disappear.